Speakers, participants and colleagues to the closing event of the Europe for Citizens programme. I'm really delighted to welcome you here on this wonderful fine spring day, certainly here in Dublin. The programme, the Europe for Citizens programme, supports shared European values, citizenship, solidarity, remembrance of European history and cultural exchanges across Europe, and it has funded 27 projects in Ireland with a total value of over €5 million. And the Wheel was appointed as the national contact point for Europe for Citizens in Ireland by initially 6 years ago by the Department of the Taoiseach, but then that unit moved into the Department of Foreign Affairs several years ago. So we were appointed in 2015 and then again in 2018. And since then, I'm really proud to be able to say that we've trained hundreds of people all over Ireland and supported successful applications from a huge variety of organisations. Some of you are here today to present your projects. Some are in the, the audience or the participants, and the people who are going to present are going to share their learning with them, with us and with you. And I'd really like to thank them and all of the other applicants and all of the Europe for Citizens stakeholders, the officials, the political parties who are here today. So unfortunately, we don't have time to feature all of the excellent projects delivered by the Irish organisations through the programme. But what we've done is we've picked representatives from the key strands to share their experience and learning with us. The Democratic Engagement and Civic Participation strand, and then the European Remembrance strand as well. And what we'll do is there are many other organisations, as I said, that have been funded that are here, but we don't have time to feature. But we have sent the full list on to the Minister's office. So just to let you know that. Also featured today will be an update from our European Programmes Manager, Emma Murta, on the future of this programme. And while a lot really remains unknown as of yet how the Europe for Citizens programme will change in the next EU framework that we're just starting now, we at the Wheel certainly hope that we can continue to support applications to the proposed new, expanded Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values, CERV, the SERV. SERV for short, basically the proposed new SERV programme. We'd like to be able to support it as contact point, especially given that the expanded programme is actually even more closely related to the work that our sector does and to the values that our sector represents. So Emma will also touch on our new Access Europe programme, and indeed Minister Byrne was present at the launch of that programme with us back in November, and basically how that Access Europe programme can support organisations to build closer links with communities and civil society organisations across the EU, and as part of that, how to access and manage EU funding programmes. In fact, Access Europe, our role as Access Europe itself, our role as Europe for Citizens contact point, and indeed all of the other wider EU programmes at the Wheel, they're all part of an overall programme of work that we have to promote European participation by community and voluntary organisations, non-profit civil society organisations, and by extension and by definition, the communities and citizens that they represent. I'm particularly delighted to welcome back our friend and former colleague, Deirdre Finley, who was the contact point for Europe for Citizens at the Wheel until she left us last September after 5 years to join a senior leadership role in Lergus. So Dee was really key to the tremendous success of the programme in Ireland, and it's really great to have her here today to see the programme to its end in her new role and to talk in her new hat and role about opportunities under Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. And last but certainly not least, and in fact the very next speaker, we want to welcome our very special guest, Minister of State for European Affairs, Thomas Byrne, TD, and he's going to start proceedings with a short welcome address. Now, Minister Byrne's department has really been integral to EU programmes for civil society facilitated by the Wheel, and indeed others. So the department funds our role as the Europe for Citizens contact point. It funds the Access Europe programme and indeed several smaller projects under the Communicating Europe initiative. And I think we know what's going on in the convention centre today in terms of a full Dáil appearance and an awful lot of workload going on there. So the Minister has absolutely held tight this time that he's been able to squeeze out from this gathering. So he will need to return fairly quickly after his remarks. So just to say that up front, that was understood. So really just in closing and handing over to the Minister, I'd just like to say to you that the general framework of European funding that we're just now starting and a lot of the details haven't been ironed out yet. but it provides a really important context in which the government's Shared Ireland initiative can also be advanced. And we certainly look forward to working with the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Taoiseach to maximise involvement of civil society as that initiative develops. And so we are really delighted to have Minister Byrne with us today, and I'm going to switch off my microphone and invite the Minister to the stage, as they say, to switch on his microphone and take it from here. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Deirdre, and thanks very much for inviting me here today. From the only person that has an office here in the convention centre is the Taoiseach, so I'm in the Taoiseach's office today, but it's a pretty bare bones operation, so grateful to him. First, thanks for the invitation and the warm welcome indeed. It's great to see so many people on the event. I think, you know, we were all kind of zoomed out, and I was surprised you were suggesting that there might be somebody left in Ireland who's not familiar with the Zoom platform. I think the rest of us who are too used to Zoom should maybe enforce kind of mandatory training on them just to get our own back when this is all over. But anyway, it's something we've had to put up with. But the one advantage is that you can actually normally get more people, and maybe from a greater geographical distance as well, that might be able to come up to events in Dublin or in other parts of the country. So look, we all want to meet in person. We're all getting, I think, quite frankly, we're all getting browned off at this. But my internet is, yeah, we're all getting browned off with the restrictions. But of course, they're here as necessary for the protection of human health. But the vaccine rollout is certainly happening. We hope to have 82% approximately of all adults with a first vaccination by the end of June. And I was speaking to a British journalist yesterday, and he goes, sure, Denmark are saying the same, and they're talking about 100%. So that will bring us as best in class within the European Union, and actually, in fact, not quite that far behind Britain. So there is hope there. There is realism as well, because those vaccine deliveries are coming. We certainly hope to get more AstraZeneca if we can. And also the CureVac is there as well. If that were to come available as well, I think it would change things. So I just thought it was important to say that, because we are here today talking about mandatory quarantine, and certainly we hope that vaccinations and all of the health measures that we're all putting up with all the time, together with travel restrictions, can have an effect that we all want, that we can all meet in person again. Look, the idea to have a celebratory closing event for the programme is a very good one. We always are spending our times, I suppose, and maybe in civic society as well, planning the next project or initiative. But you know, you do need to look at past successes and to celebrate, but also to reflect on lessons learned. And there's always room in all of our lives for improvement, and saying, right, we did that, but maybe let's do this instead. So I think that's really good. But the Europe for Citizens programme has meant that we've all punched above our weight, and I think civil society in Ireland has a lot to be proud of. So with the support from the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Wheel has helped Irish organisations and local authorities secure over €5 million to manage 30 projects since 2014. I want to thank Deirdre and all the team at the Wheel who've done a fantastic job on this role. But it's also testament to the vibrancy of civil society and the calibre of organisations who've created this meaningful citizen engagement projects across Europe. And I think we certainly need you know, an organisation like the Wheel with the expertise and the experience who can, you know, help put these programs into place. But you also need, on the other side, committed people who have the capacity themselves to be able to engage in these processes too. And that takes a lot of organisation, a lot of work by volunteers in many cases, and by civil society in general. So I'm delighted to see many of the organisations here today. Maynooth University, the Smashing Times International, Centre for Arts and Equality, the Inniscarra Twinning Association. They've won major awards in the recent round of funding. Many more Irish organisations were awarded partnership roles in a range of town twinning and remembrance projects with other organisations across Europe. I'm really committed to the idea of town twinning, and I think you know, it's really important that these twinning projects are established, but also that they're maintained as well, because we've seen certainly over the decades we've twinning projects that started and maybe didn't go anywhere, but they're so important for cultural development, social development, civic engagement, and indeed business development too. But also we saw recently where, you know, the town of Fermoy broke a twinning arrangement because of the situation with LGBT rights in that particular town that it was twinned with in Poland. We see the town reacted to that and reversed the emotion that it had. So these things they work every way, and I think to all of our mutual benefit. So the success has been consistent in the life cycle of the Europe for Citizens programme. One particular project close to my heart is the Holocaust Education Trust. I've met them on a number of occasions, and they've received funding on 4 rounds for their Crocus project. So that's a really important project to introduce young people to the historical memories around the Holocaust, and also to support their work in every way we can, because we see so much counteractivity in certain circles on that issue. And I think it's so important that we keep supporting organisations like the Holocaust Educational Trust. Other groups such as the Ballymun Job Centre in Dublin, Age and Opportunity in Dublin, NUI Maynooth, a set of coordinated projects under the civil society strand of Europe for Citizens. That's been very competitive. We've seen, as I mentioned, the twinning programs, Skerries, Killarney, Arklow, Tubbercurry. They've all created cultural links with towns across the continent, and to huge benefit. So Europe for Citizens has acted as a really important bridge connecting our civil society groups and local authorities to a diverse range of organisations throughout Europe, and really bringing our European identity to the fore as well, and our Irish identity as part of that. Many of these European organisations that you've partnered with offer unique perspectives in the defining moments of the continent's history and culture. It's important that these links are maintained and our civil society continues to tap into EU funding that focuses on civic participation, historical remembrance and fundamental rights. This is well recognised within the European Union. While this Europe for Citizens is coming to a close, we know that funding opportunities for citizen engagement will continue on another form through the MFF and Next Generation EU Recovery Fund for 2021 to 2027. So, and work on that in terms of implementing what was agreed over the course of last year in terms of the budget is ongoing to actually get that implemented into practice. That's why I'm delighted that we had the Access Europe programme up and running following the launch last November. The Department of Foreign Affairs has funded this programme to help you navigate and access these new funding opportunities, and that's really important to us. It's a real serious commitment of the government to make sure that we're accessing as much European funding as we can, but to the effect of increasing our cultural, civic and business links with our European friends and neighbours. So I know the team at the wheel are currently working hard on Access Europe to keep up a strong record of obtaining EU funds, and in recent months I've been on Radio Kerry, KCLR and other local radio stations to communicate this support and the wide range of funding opportunities that are there. And I really think, and what I like about a lot of these projects is that they are done at grassroots level in communities around the country, and I think local radio actually has a key role to play on this front. I'm also happy that many of the organisations have received funding from the Department's Communicating Europe initiative that aims to promote civic engagement dialogue on Ireland's relationship with the EU. For example, in 2020, Smashing Times linked up their Communicating Europe initiative funding with their Europe for Citizens project to produce a virtual exhibition on the history of the European Parliament. And the Inniscarra Twinning Association held an online song and art contest with a Communicating Europe theme. We'll be launching a call for applications for the next round of the Communicating Europe initiative funding in the coming weeks. We'll be publicising this on the department's website and on social media. And obviously the department can be contacted at the usual contact addresses. And this is really, really important engagement, and we strongly encourage as much take up as is possible from the projects, I suppose, that will reach people on the ground in communities, but also have broad reach. And we are coming, we've had significant moments in our European history with Britain leaving the European Union, but also in the next couple of years, we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of our own membership of the European Economic Community as it was then. So there's various moments, and I think there's a lot of positivity to look back at from day one and then to go forward into the future. I'm delighted to see Michael Collins here from the International European Affairs Institute. He's online and will be speaking shortly. The IAEA have been doing great work with support from Foreign Affairs as well on their Global Europe programme, including some fantastic online discussion. I'd encourage you all to check out that on the IAEA website. So look, thanks again, and sorry for going on so long, Deirdre, for inviting me to share my thoughts on the closing of the Europe for Citizens programme. Congratulations to every organisation, and the Wheel in particular, have made this programme a success for Ireland. I'm sorry that I can't stay for the rest of the discussion, but if there's any outcomes or views that you feel need to be expressed to me, we're certainly willing to have that and to listen to that. And just to say that this work is greatly appreciated. And also just to note as well, in terms of Northern Ireland, I think you'll see, we saw engagement there last week from Mara Sheptovich from the Commission with Michael Gove. I'll be doing similar engagement as well with some of my European ministerial colleagues as well, just to show that Europe is listening to the people of Northern Ireland, learning from the people of Northern Ireland, quite frankly showing an interest. And indeed, Northern Ireland will have an opportunity to seek funds on the Peace Plus programme as well. So there are all these opportunities now in the future, and we'll be doing as much as possible to promote them once the various legal procedures to implement the budget are put in place. We're not a federal state like the United States, where these things can happen very quickly, but 27 member states working together, and I think we do that as well as we can. Thank you, Deirdre.
Thank you very much, Minister. And again, thank you for squeezing in the time, and we're very impressed that we're beaming straight to you from the Taoiseach's office. So that's an added bonus for us. And also, but just the bit that you put in at the beginning about the update about the vaccinations and health measures, like it really is a difficult time for everybody here, personally as well as professionally. So I think I especially welcome that. Thanks very much. And actually your insight regarding where the magic happens, in the Europe for Citizens programme is absolutely right. The way we see it in the wheel is that we, the wheel, kind of make it possible, but it's the frontline organisations make it happen. So they are where the magic happens. And that remark that you made about identity, that's what's really interesting about the Europe for Citizens programme. It can be challenging a little bit to find the right space or the right groove sometimes, but it's actually really important about European identity, and so it's much more than mere funding, so to speak. So I think it's been a very interesting programme, and so thank you. I'm encouraged by your remarks about Northern Ireland, the Shared Island Unit, and I think there's definitely a role there for civil society that can be really helpful at making a contribution. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emma Murta, our European Programmes Manager, who's going to take us through the rest of the session, and I'll say good luck for the rest of the day, Minister, and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. I'm just sharing my slides now, and hopefully you can all see that now. And of course, thank you very much, Minister, and we completely understand that you need to duck out, but thanks so much for just joining us in this first instance. It was great. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of Europe for Citizens before we hand over to our speakers, who are the most important part of our event today. But before I do that, I just wanted to make sure that I shared this slide here and about the hashtag. So please feel free to follow along with our event today using the hashtag Europe for Citizens. You can tag us at EU for Citizens and at the Wheel IRL. So this also will just allow that my fellow contact points around Europe and beneficiaries from throughout Europe can kind of follow along with our celebration here in Ireland today. Yeah, I'll keep that hashtag up on my slides, so we can hopefully keep the conversation going online. So Deirdre alluded to the core characteristics of Europe for Citizens in her opening address, but just to summarize again, this programme is really about promoting understanding between the Union and its citizens, deepening awareness of what it means to be European, and developing a sense of shared European identity. And I think we'll really see that in the projects that we're going to be hearing about shortly. It ran from 2014 to 2020 and will be winding down over the next couple of months with a new programme due out very soon. And I am going to be giving an update on that new programme before the end of our session today, so stay tuned for that. In terms of how did the Europe for Citizens achieve its objectives, it did so through two strands. So there was the strand one, which was European Remembrance, and this was all around reflecting on European history, on common values, and commemorating key dates in European history, and particularly reflecting on the causes of totalitarian regimes. And then there was also strand two, which was democratic engagement and civic participation. And this was about encouraging involvement of citizens and civil society organisations in debate and discussion around European policy making and priorities. So what that looked like in reality then in terms of projects, you can see that there was the overall Europe for Citizens programme, there was the two strands within that, and then there was the types of projects that were funded. So strand one solely funded European Remembrance projects, but strand two had 4 different types of projects. There were operating grants, civil society projects, networks of towns projects, and town twinning projects. And we are lucky enough today to have an example, a best practice example in Ireland of each type of project we're going to be speaking to very soon. So they're going to share their experience and their learning and impact that their projects had within their organizations and their communities. I'm going to go ahead and give an overview of everybody now, just so that we can hopefully move quite quickly and smoothly between speakers then with minimal delays. So I'll start by introducing our first speaker now shortly. Yeah, our first speaker is going to be Michael Collins, Director General of the Irish Institute of European Affairs, and has the longest is the longest serving diplomat in the history of the Irish state as well. So the IIEA secured an operating grant under the strand for democratic engagement and civic participation in 2018 2019 and 2020. So Michael is going to share that experience with us very soon, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce the other speakers first and then hand over to Michael. So the next speaker after Michael will be Mary Moynihan. She's a writer, director, theatre and filmmaker, and is artistic director for the Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality. Smashing Times have been a Europe for Citizens success story under both of the strands that I mentioned, and have secured several projects since 2015. But today, Mary is going to share her experience under the European Remembrance Strand. Also joining us today, we have Edwina of the Dublin City Volunteer Centre. Actually, her colleague Franzie is also joining us as well, Franzie O'Donnell. They were successful under the Democratic Engagement and Civic Participation Strand with a civil society project, which was all around volunteering as a tool to strengthen EU common values. So she's going to share her learnings from that with us very soon. Then we will have Martin Brennan of Twilight Community Group. They've actually compiled a really lovely video for us today that we're going to be sharing that really kind of summarizes their experience of Europe for Citizens through several twinning projects and eventually partnering in a Network of Towns project as well. And then our final kind of case study today will be Ed Reardon from Inniscarra Town Twinning in County Cork. He's the chairperson of the Twinning Association there, and he's going to share his experience of twinning projects under Europe for Citizens. They've recently won their second project, so we look forward to hearing about that soon as well. We're going to finish up today with a final speaker before I do my quick closing remarks. So many of you who have accessed training and support in relation to Europe for Citizens over the years will know a good friend of the wheel and former colleague Deirdre Finley, who was the contact point since between 2015 and just up until September last year, and was really instrumental to the success of the programme in Ireland. She's now the programme manager at Lergus, which is the national agency for Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. And we just invited her back here today to celebrate the success of this programme, but also to tell us a little bit about opportunities for Europe for Citizens beneficiaries or those who are inspired by our the projects that we hear about today under the programs that she's working on now. So your Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. Before we finish up, then again, I'm just going to briefly touch on the future of Europe for Citizens. So what is going to happen to the programme in the 21 to 2027 framework. Deirdre already alluded to the new programme, the SERV programme, Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values. So I'm just going to break down what does that actually look like and what will it mean for the future of Europe for Citizens. And then we will also just have a quick update on the Access Europe programme that was also mentioned, which is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs, which is all around kind of accessing or supporting access to European funding from all types of programs, including, you know, a future Europe for Citizens programme. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our first case study. So Michael Collins from the Irish Institute of European Affairs, I'll invite you now to turn on your camera or turn on your mic and share your story with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emma, and thank you very much, Deirdre, as well. Delighted to be invited. We always like to come to a celebration, and this is a celebration that we're very happy to be at and to participate in. As you say, my name is Michael Collins, and I'm the Director General of the IIEA. I've been the Director General since November 2019. So relative to a lot of people here, I'm a newbie, but very glad to be part of this community. Just want to say thank you to Minister Byrne as well for his contribution and for his continuing role, and indeed for his continuing support across the sector as a whole, but specifically obviously to the IIEA, which is Ireland's leading independent foreign policy international affairs think tank. Just by way of background, the IIEA's foundation in 1991 was a direct response to the 1987 Supreme Court judgment, which the Crotty case basically, which found that significant changes to European Union treaties required an amendment to the Irish Constitution before they could be ratified by Ireland. A very, very important judgment in its day, and remains so today indeed. This requirement for a referendum on significant changes to the European treaties also brought with it a requirement for informed public debate, for information sharing and analysis of the EU, its workings, and Ireland's role in that union. Since then, the IIEA has spent 30 years, and this is our 30th anniversary this year. We've been having our own celebrations in May to this effect, so we're 30 years in existence. But since then, the IIEA has spent these years pursuing its mandate of enriching public debate on the EU and deepening understanding of the key issues for Ireland in the context of our membership. The 2016 Brexit referendum in the UK created deep uncertainty for Ireland and for the EU, and indeed beyond as well. It underlined the importance of an informed, independent, and apolitical debate on the topic of EU membership. Facilitating this debate was a role the IIEA was well placed to fill. So therefore, in 2017, the IIEA sought the support of the Europe for Citizens Program. Our goal was to expand our own program of events and research to meet the challenges that arose specifically in the context of the Brexit referendum. In our view, the program and the IIEA were a natural fit. The Institute's mandate and work program have a clear synergy with the goals of the program, namely explaining and the workings of the European Union, fostering citizen engagement with the European Union, and understanding populism and Euroscepticism. The Commission agreed with our application for funding, and the Institute was granted access to the 3-year programme of funding, now of course extended to this current 4th year from the year 2018. Let me just talk about briefly the grant and its impact, the impact that it's had on us. The EU grant represents a major injection of funding that afforded us at the IIEA the ability to fund our operations in line with the objectives of the Europe for Citizens Grant Strand 2. For a membership organisation like ours, accustomed to the annual pursuit of dozens of subscriptions and renewals, acceptance into the 3-year funding stream provided some additional security and permitted the Institute to focus more resources and energy into its public good research programmes. This funding that we received from the European Union has dramatically enhanced our ability to extend our activities and our reach and future-proof our organisation by funding key resources that were previously, for us at least, too costly. Our key resources, of course, our staff, our team, and the grant contribution made it possible for us also to look to recruit research talent more broadly right across the country. And the proof of what we have done since we began to receive EU funding is in the pudding. Since securing the grant, the IIEA has run an average of over 150 events each year, with more than 30 publications also in any one year, which is up by about 33% on previous years. This has been accompanied by enormous growth in our social media and traditional media presence and outreach to demographics that the Institute had not previously been able to engage with. All of this was facilitated by the funding received from the programme. Some of the key learnings that we would have established or derived from our participation would include, once you have received the funding, of course, you have to manage it. And the managing of the funding is obviously a key responsibility. This can present challenges for small to medium-sized organisations. The deadlines set down by the European Commission can be very tight indeed. Reports are due by the end of February each year. And for an organisation of our size, there's a very limited amount of time to thoroughly collate all the documentation and close off a financial year, all in accordance with the programme's guidelines. And of course, the audit requirements are rigorous. They are intensive and they are really, really time consuming, but obviously very, very necessary as well. But to the Commission's great credit, we have always found them to be approachable, always willing to assist within the constraints of their own remit and prompt in their response to requests. In short, my advice is to always engage with the staff of the Commission in good time to flag any issues with timelines or procedures. Ensure that you have robust policies and procedures for document recording and retrieval, particularly in current circumstances. I think we've all been challenged by the retrieval of documents from our offices at the time of pandemic when our offices were closed. But of course, this is something that auditors don't always appreciate, but nonetheless, we have to accommodate all of that, and it can be challenging. And finally, ensure that each budget line is balanced thoroughly in line with your original submission. Finally, let me just say that this EU funding has been most welcome, and I believe genuinely has been put to very, very good effect by the IIEA. As this is its final year, we naturally await with considerable interest the Commission's new proposals for the future and whether the IIEA can continue to avail of EU financial support, as it has done for the last 3 years and currently for this year as well. The work that we have undertaken continues to be of real benefit, and we believe that in the post-Brexit world, what the IIEA does on a daily basis is all the more relevant and important. With that, I'll hand you back to you, Emma. Thank you very much for inviting me. Delighted to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. That was a great update and insight into your learnings and opportunity and the impact that your positions had on your organisation. So we're really delighted you can join us and share that with us. I'm now going to move straight on to our next kind of showcase, project showcase. So we have Mary Moynihan from Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality, and she's going to talk to us around their European Remembrance projects. So over to you, Mary, when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Emma. My name is Mary Moynihan, and I'm a writer, theatre and filmmaker and a director of the Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality. And I want to thank Emma, the Wheel and the DFA and all those involved in organising today's event. We're delighted to be involved in celebrating the Europe for Citizens programme. Before talking about the work of Smashing Times that was supported under the Remembrance Strand of Europe for Citizens, I would like to speak briefly about the Europe for Citizens programme itself. I believe this programme is a unique funding stream for a number of reasons. First of all, it's very important that large funding institutions provide support to small and medium-sized organisations so that companies like our own can continue our work at the coalface with local communities. And I believe support for small to medium-sized organisations is essential for a healthy future across the arts, community, voluntary and business sectors. And to have a funding body that recognises the role of the arts in promoting human rights and values in society is very, very important. And what is unique about Europe for Citizens is that it supports the link between historical remembrance or civil society, depending on which strand you go for, and the link between those areas and linked to rights and values and linked to the arts, and that is quite unique. And the Remembrance Strand of Europe for Citizens, it focuses on key events in history such as World War II, the Holocaust, the Spanish Civil War, and also very importantly on key moments in history from an Eastern European perspective, which can sometimes be forgotten. And Smashing Times, through our work, we're able to focus on historical memory with the focus on personal recollections and individual experiences in times of crisis. And I think that's important that we have the opportunity to do that, because we're not just telling a traditional rendition of history. Historical memory is important because it's a way to move beyond this traditional, sometimes gender rigid, can often be male orientated view of history that can dominate. And what historical memory enables us to do is to open up a more diverse and inclusive narrative and shine a light on stories that have been hidden, denied or forgotten. For example, telling queer history, telling the history of artists who stood up against fascism, and very importantly, bringing the woman's voice back into history. And I think this diversity of stories can impact in a powerful way on communities today. The aim is to enable a diversity of experiences and to use those experiences as a springboard to talk about the values that matter to us today. So all of that is really, really important. And in terms of the projects that Smashing Times have presented through Europe for Citizens, our first project was Women, War and Peace. And this project used theatre, film and digital technologies to explore women's stories from World War II, and particularly stories of women who stood up against totalitarianism and oppression in their own way. And we created a book and a play and a film, which are available on our website, telling the stories of these extraordinary women from across Europe. And the book has a foreword by Marion Harkin MEP. It was an MEP then, all of which are available on our website. And I've mentioned this woman before, but one of the stories we told in that project is Mary Elms, who risked her life working with refugees during the Spanish Civil War. And I think that's important because that story has an immediate impact on young people today in regards to refugees and asylum seekers and how we treat refugees and asylum seekers today. And I want to tell two quick stories related to that project, which have remained with me. So for example, we brought 200 people together to show them the play and then do workshops in Trinity College. And a number of young people were from a school from an area designated as disadvantaged. And during one of the workshops, one of the young men, a 16-year-old young man, revealed that his grandmother was from Eastern Europe. His teachers and his schoolmates didn't know about this. And he said, I think she was impacted by, or he said, I know she had some connection to World War II, but he didn't know the story. So he very happily said he was going to go home after the workshop and ask his grandmother to tell him her life story. So I thought that was a wonderful moment. And another time was, we told the story of Mary Elms through one of the projects. And as I said, Mary was a Cork woman who risked her life saving Jewish families and other people from the Nazi gas chambers. And she saved hundreds of people, and her story is not very well known. And she's the only Irish person honoured as righteous among nations for her work saving Jewish people. But we did this performance with Mary's story in it, and a journalist called Clodagh Finn came to see the performance in Dublin. And Clodagh was so intrigued by the story, she spent a year researching Mary's life further and wrote a book called A Time to Risk All, which is a wonderful book and worth reading. And as part of the book launch, Clodagh invited one of the men, one of the children who had been rescued by Mary Elms, Ronald Friend. And Ronald was a professor living in New York, and it was him originally who had put Mary forward to be honoured as righteous among nations. So Ronald was invited to Dublin for the book launch, and we were performing the play in the Mermaid Theatre in Bray, and Ronald came to see the play. And I remember when we always perform our plays and then we have post-show discussions. And we didn't tell the actor performing Mary Elms on stage that Ronald would be in the audience. And one of the stage hands heard about this and he got so excited, he whispered it backstage, and the actor heard this just as she was about to walk on stage. So it was an extraordinary performance. And then for the post-show discussion, Ronald came onto the stage and he spoke to the audiences about his direct experiences of Mary Elms and being rescued by her as a small child, losing his father in the camps and surviving himself, and coming back years later to research and find out and tell the world about the story of Mary Elms. So we were delighted to be a part of that story. And other projects we have done have included Women in Equal Europe, which was a project looking at the stories of women across Europe today and how the EU has impacted on gender equality and the diverse experiences of women living in Europe today. I was particularly excited to work on a project. We were lead partner on all the projects I'm mentioning, but for this partner, we were an associate. For Artists Against Fascism, we were an associate partner. And that was a very exciting project where we explored stories of artists, including artists from Ireland, such as Margaret Kelly, an impresario and dancer, and Samuel Beckett, who were involved in the resistance during World War II. And another project was Comet Lines, which was about exploring stories of people in resistance during World War II. And again, we came across numerous Irish stories of people who left Ireland and worked in Europe, campaigning against fascism and in the resistance. And I think that's important to remember those stories. And our final project, that was EU 1979, which was a women's project remembering the women from the first European Parliament elected by universal suffrage. So there was, that European election was in 1979 and there were 67 women elected, and all their stories are told on our website. And I would like to just finish by very briefly referring to a poem which was written in relation to one of the women called Simone Veil, who was the first president of the European Parliament. And this poem is called The Sleeping Heart. And it says, "The fact of the matter is, if I haven't lost it entirely, is that this body, our own pulse, has been laid grossly to waste again and again and again. Cyanide, napalm, atomic bomb, we know them all already, know them all as fact. But to feel, to wake, and all amnesia forget, to care and wake the sleeping heart." And that's what these stories tell us, is to wake our hearts and to care about the world we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was lovely, a really nice way of telling your story, and I suppose spotlighting how important it is. I suppose maybe even now more than ever, to remember our European history as we become kind of increasingly polarized throughout the world, to look back and learn from our histories, and to remember not just the stories and preserve the stories and tell the stories, but also to reveal different perspectives on those stories that have been kind of lost over the years. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you're right on time, so I'm going to move over to our next speaker as well. So we have Edwina and Franzie O'Donnell from the Dublin City Volunteer Centre are joining us now to tell us about their civil society project on volunteering and EU values. So Edwina, when you're ready, over to you.
Thank you so much, Emma, and hi everybody. Francie and I are delighted to be with you today, and again, just thank you for inviting us. So I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures. These are all real life participants who are involved in our project. So you'll get to hear about, I suppose, some of the activities that we had as we go along. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a flavour in terms of the background, the technical details, the concept. Francie will kind of cover a little bit of the programme that we had. And then at the end, I'll just give a few kind of learnings and tips that we had from our project as well. So just to say, we had 4 partners, ourselves, Scotland, Brussels and Croatia. And part of the project that we wanted to do was have countries which had a similar sized population, because we wanted to kind of compare some of the volunteering infrastructure within that. Just to say again, in terms of anybody who might be applying, I know Europe for Citizens is ending, but in terms of the new programme that Deirdre spoke about, I think the year that we got it, there was 25 projects that were selected. So the top 25, and to be selected, we scored 12th. We had to score 83. We scored 83.25 out of 90 points. So just to kind of give you that idea of it as well. The project budget was 127,500, and the project basically ran over 18 months. So as Emma mentioned, the project strand that we applied for was under the civil society strand, and under that there was a couple of themes that you kind of had to hit when we were applying. One was solidarity in times of crisis, and the other one was the debate on the future of Europe. And I think sometimes to be successful in terms of the EU projects, it's in terms of what are the strands, what are the themes for that year, and how does your project align with them? Because again, obviously you need to apply for something that you want to do that aligns with your own mission, vision and values as an organisation, but also that it's the right fit and that it's going to kind of line up in terms of being a robust application. So obviously we do what we say on the tin. We're a volunteer centre, and we have a focus on social inclusion. So we're always looking for projects and opportunities that can support more people into volunteering, and particularly those that might experience more barriers to involvement. The other thing that we were very keen to do was complete some research around the infrastructure of volunteering, because there was very, very little research completed in Ireland at the time. So they, in a way, were our key aims and objectives. But again, as we were saying in terms of the title, you know, solidarity in times of crisis, the debate on the future of Europe, how can we fit within that? And so at the time, you know, some of the discussion and the debate was Brexit, the migrant crisis, high youth unemployment in other parts of the EU, general kind of disenfranchisement and disengagement. And so when we were kind of thinking about those, and for us, you know, wanting to have a project that focused on volunteering, there was also a lot of talk at the time about solidarity. And there was, you know, the European Volunteer Corps was about to be launched, and there was a number of speeches, I suppose, within Europe that policymakers were saying that volunteering is a way to express solidarity, or, you know, we can strengthen solidarity, which is one of our key EU values. And so we began to think about that, and we're saying, you know, everybody says, yes, you know, solidarity is important, volunteering can strengthen this value. But we're saying in terms of, you know, what's the research out there that actually says that? So we decided in a way to put that to the test and actually see, in terms of a hypothesis, can volunteering actually strengthen EU common values? Can it be used as a tool? So in a way, I suppose that's the background to our project. There was a list of EU values out there. It was interesting to note that solidarity in terms of the EU values and in terms of how important they were to Europeans was actually ranked 9 out of 12. So it wasn't top of the list, but it was there. But rather than kind of having this big mouthful of volunteering as a tool to strengthen EU values, we come up with the working title, which was a lot more palatable to everybody, called Get Connected. So Franzie, I'll hand over to you just to kind of give a little flavour of the programme.
Thanks, Edwina. Yeah, so the program really consisted of 5 key elements that the 4 partners implemented in the 4 countries. The first one was what we called conversation salons. So these were world cafe type of conversations that we facilitated to invite the participants to actually, as the title kind of suggests, connect with each other. And I think that was really kind of a key part for people to come together and to talk about volunteering and to talk about these European values, what it meant to them, you know, topics like community spirit or the local community issues in the areas that people lived, and how these values kind of linked to that. We had 2 rounds of these conversation salons, one before people volunteered, so they had never volunteered before, and then the second was after, to come back together and reflect and share the experience and hear from the other countries as well. The second element then was the volunteer placements itself. So they were really at the core of the project. So we had 139 volunteers across the 4 countries that had never volunteered before. And they went off over you know, a couple of months and volunteered to really get this experience and to be able to reflect on how the volunteering would link to these values. So that they would have done all sorts of volunteering activities, from delivering food to homeless people, volunteering in a charity shop, you know, helping with kids and creative writing, kind of a broad range of projects depending on their own interests and backgrounds and where they were. So we helped them to find these volunteering opportunities. The third element was digital media training. We just wanted people to be able to document their own experience. So we ran a number of workshops just to help them to get a little bit up to speed on taking photographs and recording, documenting their volunteering experience. The 4th element was the research that Edwina already mentioned. So this was really to ground the project in a little bit more in-depth research around the infrastructure of volunteering in the 4 countries, so we could compare how volunteering was kind of set up in the 4 countries. And we also done a big survey with all the participants before and after they volunteered, so that we could find out a little bit more about how they felt these values had changed over the course of their volunteering experience. All of this was published in a research report that's available on our website if anybody's interested in that. And then finally, we organised an exhibition, a roadshow in each country to present the documentation, the photographs, the stories, and really to celebrate the volunteers and share with a wider public the experience of volunteering and what it means for EU values, such as solidarity, for example. Edwina, I'll hand back over to you.
Perfect. So I suppose just briefly then, in terms of some of the lessons learned, there was actually lots, and in the summary reports that Franzie has mentioned in terms of the research, we actually have 3 guides that you can access. So there's some really interesting findings in that. I think the first one, just to say openly, that actually, I won't go into the reasons, but it's really hard to measure whether values, you know, volunteering does help to strengthen the volunteer infrastructure in terms of the way it's shaped. So it was just for lots of different reasons. It's a very hard survey to do and to measure before and after. However, we did have almost 150 people volunteering, and we recorded all of their experiences and their stories. And so what came out of that actually was that, you know, as local groups, as NGOs, as practitioners, we need to really seriously think about how we make space for people to be able to converse, to connect with one another in a public space, but also that we need to allow that space for listening, for reflection. And so, you know, that sense of ideas have consequences and they lead to actions. So that was really important as well. We did find that actually there was a real connection with EU higher values. People in Ireland at the time didn't seem to actually know what solidarity was. I mean, the concept of it wasn't something that people used in their everyday language, but when you actually gave them the chance to express themselves, that in fact, yes, there was that sense of connection to the values, which then became the catalyst for uniting people and kind of let's say, rallying people around different causes and communities. And I suppose just the final thing there, you know, values move volunteers' experiences from transactional to transformational. So again, 150 people involved in direct volunteering. And what you observed from a values perspective is that there was a lot of strong themes and values that emerged within itself, whether friendship, humility, joy, compassion, learning, imagination, community building. Yes, tasks were undertaken, but nobody spoke about the transactional part, the tasks. What they spoke about was the experience and what they got from it themselves. So I think then, you know, as practitioners, we need to think about the language and narrative that we're all using around volunteering. And then, sorry, Emma, I know time is up. So I think Michael kind of expressed as well at the start in terms of some of the tips, and we would say the same, just kind of be very clear and rigorous in terms of your application, make sure everything is covered. And the last thing I would say is choose the right partners and don't put volunteering or civic participation as an afterthought. They really welcome that in a lot of the projects. Thanks a million.
Great. Thanks so much, Edwina. That was a really excellent kind of insight into the process and how you go from an idea to a reality, and the impact that it can have on your organization. It's certainly very inspirational for all the people here who are thinking about pursuing projects, and certainly all of those considerations that both Michael highlighted there and now Edwina has highlighted again around preparing and how to design projects and choosing the right partners. That's something that the Wheel is really willing to help people with, and our whole Access Europe program is set up to support people through that. So it's great to have that. You know, when you see it in practice, though, it really does make a difference. It helps you to understand, you know, what you're getting yourself in for. So with that, I'm going to move on to our next case study here. And actually, our next one is from the Twilight Community Group. And Martin Brennan, who's the chair of that group, is here with us today, but he made us this fantastic video to kind of explain the journey that they've had through Europe for Citizens funding, the impacts that it's had on their community and on their organization and the development of their organization, and I suppose what they've taken from the experience. So I'm going to try and share that now, hopefully, and you can all see that, and I will press play. So here we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Martin Brennan and I am the chairperson of the Twilight Community Group. The Twilight Community Group was formed in 2014, and since then we've been working with the European for Citizens Fund, and now we have over 18 different partners throughout Europe. Today we see the end of that fund. So we're going to highlight 3 of the main stakeholders in which we have developed a very strong relationship. Those 3 cities are Marne-le-Campion in France, Malbork in Poland, and Sighișoara in Romania. First of all, we'd like to show you some of the highlights of Kilkenny City. Kilkenny is the medieval capital of Ireland. As you can see, we have some wonderful tourist attractions, but also some lovely winding streets and an atmosphere that you will not find anywhere in Europe. We believe that Kilkenny is not only the cultural capital of Ireland, but possibly of Europe. Our first venue to highlight today is Malbork.
have a fantastic example of cooperation between Kilkenny and the Polish city of Malbork. They are twinned, and it's a fantastic example of people-to-people contact. It's about the exchange of their experience, about exchange of culture, also about strengthening of economic cooperation between Poland and Ireland.
Malbork City and Kilkenny City are now twinned. This began in 2015 under the guidance of the Twilight twinning protocols, which are now accepted as a standard barrier for all of Kilkenny City's future and past twinnings. Malbork and Kilkenny have built up some fantastic relationships. We have a Charter of Friendship Agreement with the municipal district, and during this time we would have had some wonderful agreements with their Hotel Federation, their Chamber of Commerce, all overseen and endorsed by Her Excellency the Irish Ambassador to Poland, Emer O'Connell. Arts and culture are a major part of our developments, and the Balbini, who now have been in Kilkenny on numerous occasions and are always welcome back with their wonderful song, dance and arts. They now are a regular feature in our St. Patrick's Day parade. Our second partnership we wish to highlight today is Blarney-le-Campion in France. Here is our Minister for Heritage, Malcolm Noonan.
The single most important benefit of twinning is the exchange and partnership, exchange of experiences, exchange of cultural values and cultural participation. And from our point of view, from the various projects we've been involved in right across Europe, one thing we've seen for sure is that partners on both sides gain from the twinning partnership. There's only good to be gotten from it, and I do think that it would be fantastic to see lots more communities applying for Europe for Citizens.
Marnier and the Twilight Group also have a Charter of Friendship Agreement. This was signed by the Mayor of the Municipal District, Bernard Halley, who has been the Mayor now since 1995. Blarney-le-Campion, through all the different campaigns and projects that the Mayor has put in place, have a fantastic relationship with their seniors. This is something that we wish to develop on a long-term basis, where the seniors from the Twilight Seniors Group and the New Park Residents Association and Seniors Forum will now enjoy some trips to and from Malbork, hopefully at the end of the COVID-19 restrictions. Our next stop is in northern Transylvania, a region of Romania made famous by our own Bram Stoker and his legend of Dracula. Sighisoara has probably two of the hardest working members of any NGO that we've encountered. The NGO in question is and the two names are Alexandra and Florentina. These two ladies have overseen a number of projects that can only benefit the youth and all the up-and-coming entrepreneurs throughout Europe with their programs. One of the current programs you can see is highlighted by the number of flags from all the different regions throughout Europe and beyond. During our period with Sighisoara and all the other partners, we have had many workshops. Workshops that would have been held with Chamber of Commerce, municipal districts, and of course invited guests. One of the major ones that we would have had is our international conference held in Kilkenny in 2018 and 2019, with 2020's deferred to 2021. We would have had over 15 different nationalities present in Kilkenny for these conferences. The speakers came from the diplomatic corps, but they also included many ambassadors, including our very good friend from Morocco, who spoke about the integration and migration of Moroccans to Europe. And here to talk about the benefits to communities from the projects is our Mayor, Mr. John Coonan.
The world is a small place and we're all only participants in passing through that world. So it's incumbent on us all to be together and to meet one another wherever we can. And through twinning, I think, is probably the best ways that our cultures and our societies as in life can meet. And we all learn from one another.
Kilkenny City and County has now diverse communities. Coming from all the four corners of the world, we in the Twilight Community Group work in each individual community. Our Board of Management is set up with a member from each one of these communities. We believe in that all these communities should tell us what they require rather than we telling them this is what they need. Our aim is to include them in our international cultural house where they all can come regardless of their nationality and practice their heritage, their history, their culture and their arts, and of course their language. The European Citizens Fund, though it may end today, has been something that we are proud to say that we were involved with. We have met many friends throughout Europe, 18 of the 28 states we are now connected with. Without the help of the EU, we would not have been able to meet these wonderful friends and develop our Connecting of Culture programs. We in the Twilight Community Group believe in communities are stronger together. Thank you for watching. Slán Lat ar Scoramachd.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And thanks hugely to Martin Brennan and everybody at the Twilight Community Group for putting together that lovely story, really, for all of us to kind of show their journey through Europe for Citizens. And I suppose really just the impact that this fund can have on smaller groups, how enriching it can be to communities. And aren't we just lucky that there are people like Martin and his colleagues, and that there are groups like Twilight in Ireland that adds such huge value to communities. So thank you so much to Martin and his colleagues for sharing that. And with that, we're going to move on to our final case study dedicated to town twinning. So I think we actually have both Edward and Eileen Reardon, who are going to share their experience from an Iniscara town twinning perspective of engaging in twinning projects. So Ed and Eileen, when you're ready, you can unmute yourselves and
yeah. You hear us there, okay, Emma?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Sound and video goes. Okay, so we're with the Inniscarra Twinning Association, and I wish we could say we were 30 years old. The association is 30 years old. It started in 1990. So it's pretty long-lived voluntary twinning group, I'm glad to say. It's completely personal and family-based. So it's really supported by volunteers in our own little village of Inniscarra in County Cork. And on the other end, we're twinned and have been twinned for 30 years with the village of Plougonvin, which is in Brittany. Every 2 years on average, we make a trip back and forth by ferry. So typically 35 or so Irish will gather themselves together and sail off on the ferry for a week in Plougonvin. And then in alternate years, a similar group will come from there to Ireland, to Inniscarra here. Now, everybody stays, we don't stay in hotels or anything like that. It's just volunteer families putting up their visitors. And naturally, in that way, we've got to know a lot of the people of Plougonvin on a very personal level, which is wonderful. You know, you have these really strong personal ties. For example, during the COVID period, we've had several times a week, we have Zoom chats with a couple of people at their end and just chat about the weather or anything, the current situation. So when we visit each other's communities, as I say, we stay in each other's homes. We visit local industries, colleges, beauty spots, historic sites, and we manage to hit the odd restaurant and bar as well, just to keep the conversation going. The whole thing, the expenses aren't huge because generally people cover their own costs, but you do need funding for transport, for group meals and so on. And EU funding and Department of Foreign Affairs funding has been absolutely essential to keep us going for the 30 years. So we have now and again put in for Europe for Citizens funding. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I'm glad to say that in it's a moot point. We applied for 2021. Obviously, that has to be kicked back to 2022 to host the Bretons here. But we were successful in getting the minimum grant, around €5,000 from Europe for Citizens. And a big shout out to the Wheel, Deirdre Finley, yourself, everybody who with the Wheel is very good for advice, fine-tuning applications, and so on and so on. Because as other speakers have said, the process is pretty strict. You have to get your proposals right. So I won't go on too long. That's the guts of the twinning. It's still going strong, I'm glad to say. Eileen here in a minute will talk about some of the branching out from the twinning. I'll just share a few photos here. Let me see. Wrong one, excuse me a sec now. Let's see. Share screen, where are we gone? Okay. Okay, just a few photos of the kind of stuff we get up to during the twinning. Typical Frenchman in a typical Irish house, and typical Irish coffees being quaffed in the background. This is the kind of homes that we stay in Plougonvin. We now and again run specialized sporting events of a pretty non-competitive nature. You know, when the weather is fine in Brittany, it's the best place on earth for a little outdoor buffet and chat. We have our twinning charters with Plougonvin going back to 1990. We're very lucky to have talented musicians, particularly on the Irish side. And in the early days, our arriving twinning group was more than a little surprised to see that themselves, Les Frosties, were advertised for a big concert that nobody had mentioned beforehand. But these concerts, both formal and informal, work very well. In the early days, the local newspapers gave the twinning a lot of publicity locally because it wasn't a well-known thing, this idea of twinning. So here's the location. Plougonvin is quite close to Roscoff and Morlaix. It's not a big place, it's a little town. So we've got our twinning going, and touch wood, it'll keep going for another 30 years. Eileen now will talk about some of the offshoots of the twinning committee.
All right. Okay. In theory, as Ed said, we twin every second year. So we go to France or they come here. But outside of that, then we have a whole load of other sort of related activities. So for example, families have had language exchanges, au pairs going both ways, people who are looking for work placement experience, summer work. These are all sort of arranged on a personal level between us and people on the other side. And this has been going on since we started. There is a big knock on from tourism. It would be a very poor year that we didn't receive at least one group coming from France, coming to Cork, a bit of hospitality, and then they're off up to Connemara or down to West Cork or whatever. So there is a big, and we would say the same the other way. We would go to France and we would always be highly hosted on the French side. So it's very friendly, and very much on a personal level. One of the, Ed was talking about that we have kept our contacts up during the lockdown. An interesting small thing, the Blarney Singing Club, which is a traditional singing club. Because it's now doing its business on Zoom, some of our twinners Zoom into it every 2 weeks and take part in it. So there's a Plug and Van wing of the Blarney Singers Club. The other thing that we wanted to mention in particular, and Deirdre and the Wheel we're very grateful to them for this, that they sent us in the direction of funding from the Department of Foreign Affairs. And we have run two events as a result of that. We had an arts and music competition. We've done various versions of it. This year we had a big increase in numbers. We had about 50 school kids taking part, putting in art pieces, promoting European ideas and writing songs. And one of the nice things, I thought anyhow, was that the winning song this year came from a school in Ballincollig, a 5th class. And when we looked at the names of the boys in the choir, they were from all over the world. There was definitely a very new Irish input into our singing competition. Previously, we were confined obviously because of COVID, but the last time we ran it, we brought over a group from France. They played in schools. They played in I think 4 or 5 different schools locally. They took part in the folk festival in Cork, and then they also, as Ed will show you in a minute, we also had a concert in St. Senan's Church in Clero that was very well attended and was a huge success. One other little thing that we did as well, there was a youth group in Pluggonvan, Passage. I'm not sure if you know, if you're familiar with it, but we hosted a group of about roughly 20 between students and leaders. This was sort of separately to the twinning and in conjunction with the Gael Skull in Ballincollig. I think it'll give you a little blast of the concert, so you'll get a sense of it. Okay, so we'll finish up with a 30-second clip of this rather magical concert. But before we go, you know, a lot of the speakers were talking in formal terms about European solidarity, European identity. And really, we think that the Europe for Citizens and also the Communicating Europe program, on the ground, it is a great antidote to Euroscepticism. And everybody in our twinning group anyway is just unabashed Europhiles, and long may it continue so. So thanks everybody. I'll throw on this little 30-second clip if I can of the concert.
That's great, thank you.
Here we go.
Go ahead.
Sinead,
Great.
that's our lot. I hope that played out.
That was fantastic, Ed and Eileen. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's it shows really that kind of value again, and exactly what you were saying, that these projects kind of convince people of why Europe is, and being European is a good thing, is a wonderful thing, and just even just to see that from that project, so many other things came, like these arrangements with au pairs and languages and tourism and everything. It's just fantastic. So well done, and thank you for sharing. And with that, I'll move straight on to our other guest from Lérgus, so Deirdre Finley, who, as we said, was the contact point up until very recently and is here to say hello again to everybody, and also maybe to talk about some other opportunities under Erasmus Plus and the European Solidarity Corps. So Deirdre, over to you when you're ready. Oh, sorry, Deirdre, I don't know if your microphone is working. I thought maybe you were on mute.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
You're back now.
So I just was saying thank you so much for inviting me. Today's event seems like a really opportune celebration of projects funded and a get-together of people who may have met before, or if they hadn't, they can hear more about how they interpreted the program and how they managed to run projects themselves. So my name is Deirdre, and I joined the wheel in 2015. And between 2015 and 2020, I tried to entice people to apply for the grant. And now it's great to see all of that come into fruition. I'm now working at Lérgus, which is the national agency for 2 European funding programs that you may have engaged with. One is Erasmus Plus and 2 is the European Solidarity Corps, but there are many other things that the organization does. I'm going to share a couple of slides, but really, I don't want to labor too much on technical stuff today, because as I said, this is about your projects and your event. So just hang on one second, Emma, and I'll just go to this part here. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah, okay. I hope that, oh, is that okay?
Yeah, there it is. Well, we can see the full presenter view, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So you can see that. Oh, you can only see presenter view. Okay, we can just go back to just seeing it this way. Is that better? So just in terms of what I was going to talk about today, I was invited to tell you a little bit about European funding opportunities beyond Europe for Citizens, because if the program has closed, surely that means there are other opportunities that you could avail of. So at Lérgus, we are really, promoting and enticing applications to 2 flagship programs. One is called Erasmus Plus, and the other is called the European Solidarity Corps. And I don't know if you've heard of Lérgus, but really what we do is that we manage national and international exchange programs in certain sectors such as education, youth, community, and vocational education and training. But we also have a whole plethora of other activities that we run too. And really, I'd just like to emphasize that our organization, Lérgus, offers more than just funding. We also organize many different training, workshops and events and meetings that you can attend, or your organization can attend, which will help you develop your partnership, your research into certain areas, perhaps if you work with adult learners to develop their skills. So really, if you go to our website, you're not just looking for funding and grants and deadlines. There are lots of other events and things that you can avail of, which may bring you finally on a pathway to funding. Just quickly on the Erasmus program, you might think, hang on, that's for 3rd level students to travel to other member states. Actually, for us at Lérgus, it's about all kinds of other activities. The new program starting this year is a staggering 23 billion euro. So think about all those grants and projects that will take place across the sectors. And the sectors I'm talking about really is youth work, schools education, adult education, and vocational education and training. But this is suitable for organizations who work with people of all ages who are still on a lifelong learning plan. So let's think about it really as an education program that's non-formal. And the priorities at the moment, unsurprisingly, a little bit like Europe for Citizens, is inclusion, digitalization, the participation in democratic life, and that's really, really connected to those previous projects that we heard about today in the citizenship realm. And the last one, unsurprisingly, a priority around sustainability. There'll be mobility projects and long-term partnerships. But I think the main thing to say is that the deadlines right now are not set. They could be around May for the first deadlines for funding, and the next one's in October. But let's just tell you a little bit more now about the European Solidarity Corps. So this is another flagship program run by the European Union that Lérgus is managing. And again, a staggering amount of money, 1.26 billion, will be spent on this volunteering program for young people aged 18 to 30 from 2021 to 2027. The European Solidarity Corps will allow your organisation to host volunteers, young people, to do particular meaningful work. So it's not just, you know, adding them into your organisation, it's actually developing work for them that's meaningful, that helps achieve your goals, but also helps develop them as young people. It also has a great strand in it that I truly love, which is called the Solidarity Projects. This is where young people themselves can devise volunteering projects. But before you can get this funding, first you must get something called a quality label. So that's more in the technical side. But rather than me laboring the detail of programs, what I'd like you to do is to think about events you could attend. All of these great workshops are being run by the Lergas team in the coming weeks. We've got a European Solidarity Corps and Youth Discovery Day. We're doing a series of 6 webinar Wednesdays. It's an hour every Wednesday where you can learn about special areas, such as, for example, we're doing a special session on communicating your EU project, and that's really useful stuff. We're also doing schools education trainings and EU-wide youth training. So what I mean is an event you can attend where you'll meet people from other member states. That's a great contact making opportunity. So if you want to know more about these opportunities, I'd invite you to visit our website to meet the team or to email me. I'll stop sharing now. So I feel like I'm presenting the program, but really it's just to say again, this has been a really great event, and you're all stellar beneficiaries and wonderful people who've tried so hard to make an impact in the citizenship area and to try and discuss and explore the whole area of European citizenship. So I'm so happy to be here today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Deirdre, and we're delighted to have you back. It wouldn't have been right to have the event without you, given all the fantastic work that you did on it over the years and really single-handedly kind of driving it. So thank you so much for being here. And certainly it's well worth people understanding that, you know, Europe for Citizens is an entryway into European funding, but there's so much more. There's so many opportunities, and often Erasmus or the Solidarity Corps can be kind of a natural progression in a lot of ways. So yeah, it was great to have that insight so that people know that the opportunities aren't over from here. And certainly, you know, I'd also like to kind of share that, hold on now, I just have to stop share and do this again. Just to quickly note a little bit about the future of the Europe for Citizens program. So I'm going to go through that now. Let me just make sure that I slide. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I'm going to just briefly comment on the future of Europe for Citizens, because I know that's probably on people's minds where they're thinking that this is the end of the program now, but what's going to happen next? So what is scheduled to happen next is that from 2021 to 2027, we have a new EU financial framework. And in this EU financial framework, the Europe for Citizens program is set to merge with another program, the Rights, Equality and Citizenship program, to make a larger overarching program called Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values, and that's SERV, which Deirdre alluded to earlier as well. Now we have political agreement on this program, and the model that I'm about to present and the information about it has all been approved by the agency in Brussels responsible for it. But I suppose, like with the situation with that Deirdre referred to with Erasmus, that they're waiting on their program guide, they're waiting on deadlines. We're in the exact same situation, so we're waiting for more detail. So there might be some small changes to what I'm going to present today, but you know, we're more or less, this is what the future of the program is going to look like. And in terms of what's the overall goal with SERV, with this new program, what is it, you know, why make this change? It's all about more funding for priority areas, so kind of streamlining things to allocate more funding for actions, a strong focus on European added value and on performance, less red tape for beneficiaries, which is always welcome, I think, and particularly when you looked at people sharing their experience of the application and of reporting, this is always a nice development. And a more flexible and agile budget with a clearer and leaner architecture. And this is really, you know, about being able to respond to challenges as they come along. You know, if the last 7 years have shown us anything, it's that things can change very quickly, and that the programs need to be able to respond to this in real time. So in terms of what it will look like, I suppose the overall objective is to protect and promote rights and values as enshrined in the treaties, in particular by supporting civil society organisations in order to sustain open, democratic and inclusive societies. And within that, then you see this kind of similar structure as the last programme, where there's like 3 strands. There's rights and equality and rights strand, I should say, about promoting rights, citizens engagement and participation strand, and then the Daphne strand, which is all around combating violence. This merging of programs happens quite frequently in different European programs, and Daphne used to be a program of its own back in before 2013, and is now kind of returning as a strand of the new SERVE program. So essentially, Europe for Citizens will no longer be a standalone program, but it will be a strand of a much larger and more comprehensive program built on citizenship, equality, rights and values, and it very much lives in that middle citizens engagement and participation strand. There is also talk of a new strand on EU values, which is all around supporting civil society organisations to increase their capacity to react and to ensure adequate access of all citizens to their services, counselling and support activities, and to carry out advocacy activities to promote rights. So whether that will be a 4th strand or whether it could be incorporated into the Europe for Citizens or middle strand, we have to see, but that's it's very much in keeping anyway with the overall objectives of the programme. In terms of what activities we can expect to be funded in this new SERVE programme, we've heard a lot about lots of different types of projects that have been carried out under Europe for Citizens today. And we have, I suppose, a verbal agreement from or verbal confirmation from the agency in Brussels that these types of projects will continue, so that there will still be operating grants, civil society projects and twinning projects. But it'll just be also a lot broader than that to bring in, I suppose, that rights, equality, citizenship element as well. So in terms of actual activities that you can expect to be funded, you're looking at things like analytical studies and research, awareness raising, dissemination campaigns, support for European level actors or NGOs, and then training activities, mutual learning, workshops, experts meetings and conferences. And then just to look at the budget, so we're looking at an overall budget of 1,442,000,000 overall. So even more than even just that Europe for Citizens strand, just that middle strand of the programme, will have a huge increase in budget than the Europe for Citizens programme ever had. So this is really positive, and we can expect to see more funding opportunities around this citizenship, exchange, solidarity, remembrance space, with more budget available over the next 7 years. So that's very positive, and there's lots of inspiration to take from the case studies today. How to keep informed on this, as I said, and as Deirdre alluded to, we are in a bit of a transition period at the moment, waiting for these new programs to come out. So how do you keep in the know? How do you know when the opportunities are coming along, when there's deadlines, what kind of training and information there is available to us? Well, that, I suppose, is where we can come in. We're committed to keeping people up to date around not just SERVE, but keeping track of all European programs and European funding opportunities. And we're doing that primarily through our Access Europe programme. So we alluded to this earlier as well, but this is a programme funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs that is here to support organisations in accessing and managing European funding over the next 3 years. And this includes all programmes. The Wheel is the contact point for Europe for Citizens, and we hope to be the contact point for SERVE when that comes around. But for the other programmes, it's not that we're experts advising people on that, but we act as a kind of central hub where we can signpost people. So if they're interested in citizenship funding, they can stay with us and we will support them from a contact point perspective. But if they're interested in education, we can signpost them to Lergas, or in any of the other number of programs that there are available, we can signpost people to where their idea best belongs and kind of act as that one-stop shop and kind of gateway into European funding. So that's what Access Europe is about. And in terms of what we can offer, we're doing all of the research into the funding programme and the deadlines as they come out over the next few months so that you don't have to. And we're condensing that into hopefully easily digestible, understandable chunks of information on our website and putting them into a monthly newsletter. So you can subscribe to that for free and keep up to date and have all that research delivered directly to your inbox every month. We provide free training and events, one-to-one advice, application support and signposting, as I mentioned. And then we're also focusing a lot on networking opportunities locally and at EU level to help, I suppose, build partnerships and build connections that could lead to projects. And you can follow along with this as I said, our website is just accesseurope.ie. We're on Twitter at Europe Access. There's the Access Europe newsletter. You can sign up to that on the website, and you can get in contact with us at any time at europe@wheel.ie. So that's a little bit of a rush at the end, so I'm a couple of minutes over, so I do want to let you go, but just to say that thank you so much to everyone for being here for this celebration of this very special program, of all the fantastic things that it's achieved over the few years that it's been here, and I suppose to have gotten inspiration for the next phase of funding and where your organization might be able to benefit and might be able to engage in projects. So yeah, we're delighted that you were able to join us. I want to thank our speakers, Deirdre Garvey, CEO of the Wheel, for kicking things off. Definitely have to thank the Minister of State for European Affairs, Thomas Byrne, for our welcome address and for making the time to be with us on a very busy day. A huge thanks to our showcase speakers, Michael Collins of the IIEA, Mary Moynihan of Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality, Edwina Deward and Franzie O'Donnell from the Dublin City Volunteer Centre, Martin Brennan from Twilight Community Group, and Ed Reardon and Eileen Reardon of the Inniscarra Town Twinning group. So, and a huge thank you as well to Deirdre Finley of Lergus, not just for joining us today, but for all of her hard work on this programme since 2015. And we will keep you all informed as the programme develops. But for now, thank you very much, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks. Okay.